Good evening. Tonight, I would like to speak to you about why you never find Bigfoot bones. This is an interesting subject, and it comes up now and then from believers and non believers alike as part of the mystery. Also, a lot of skeptics throw this out there too, kind of as a I gotcha type moment. And it is an interesting question, and it is a very good question. And I was talking to my mom. She had a copy of an old Grover Krantz book, and he was addressing it in there. And very fascinating. While I agreed with what he said, I also wanted to touch on what he said and some of my thoughts and opinions, some of the things I've heard over the years, some of my personal experience of being in the woods when it comes to other dead animals, if you consider these things animals. But I think it's quite fascinating. So let's jump into it. One of the main things I think is very first, humans and or animals, virtually all animal species, when they are wounded, when they are sick, when they're old age, when they're not eating, they typically go off and hide. They go to a very remote location, a cave or a burrow or a den or someplace farther away. If it's a bear, farther away from the range of other bears and other things that could take them out, because they want to find a place to either get better or die. And if they go to a place for a few days and they get sick and then they start feeling better and then they can go back out into the woods and make their way through it, then everything's fine. But if they happen to pass away in a very remote location or a cave or a burrow underground or someplace that's warm if it's cold or someplace cool if it's hot, that would be a pretty good reason why you don't find them consistently. A lot of animals do this, and it just kind of makes sense. If you're wounded or not feeling great, you're going to want to find a spot to retire in. Now, also, scavengers, North America, coyotes are everywhere, foxes are everywhere, even squirrels will eat bones. I remember watching squirrels like, what has that thing got in its mouth? It's got a chicken bone in its mouth. Ants, all sorts of other bugs and insects, they can pretty much strip a skeleton clean within a few weeks. And then while other predators and other birds and things carry off parts and distribute bones. And if it's cattle grazing country or bison, they can crack bones and crunch bones. And so it's just kind of one of those things where natural deaths, once they do occur in a very rare location, the evidence doesn't stick around for too long. Hair is gone for in a few weeks. The flesh is gone in a few weeks. The bones can decompose and break down. Also, most of North America, a lot, especially in pine forests, the soil is very acidic, and the acidity does attack the calcium in bones and in teeth and breaks them down rather quickly, which is why you don't get a lot of fossils in areas that have a lot of forest and trees in general. It's more like caves and wetlands and other stuff. It has to be a very particular type of environment to preserve bones for the fossilization, where the bones turn to stone essentially. And so that's kind of the main reasons why I don't think you find Bigfoot bones or a lot of animal bones in general. The other thing to consider is primarily what I think is going on too is these are social animals. Bigfoots are often seen in groups or clans. If there's one, there's bound to be another, a lot like humans or a lot like other primate species. Being somewhere, it's a pretty good guess. We don't know what they are exactly, but it's a pretty good guess that they are a very human-like, very ape-like creature. And if you look back in our human fossil record, going to Neanderthals and some of the other pre-modern human species, they bury their dead. Bury their dead in mounds, ritualized burials, disposing of the bodies. And this was done, for stink, for smell, for disease. So you're not watching coyotes and other animals tear apart your loved ones. It just makes a lot of sense to bury people, which is why we still do it today. And the other thing I'd like to mention that I've covered in other videos is I think in really hard climates, very hard times of year in winter, if food is scarce or summertime or changing environments or circumstances, illness, if it's gripped the whole clan and they're unable to hunt, I think cannibalism would also really play a big factor. Maybe they would eat and discard the bones. There have been stories of, like at the Siege of Honabi, of one being shot and the other one's carrying it off. There are other stories of Bigfoots tearing apart and on the spot and disposing of bodies of their fallen ones. Dogmen have also been reports of this. If one gets shot or wounded, then the other ones will take it apart. So yes, and the other main factor for me is if you find some bones in the woods, maybe a skull or a femur might make you think twice, but just general bones, arm bones scattered about, crunched bones, finger bones, tarsal bones. Would you know what they were? Would you know what Sasquatch bones look like? I guess they would look pretty human, but even then, do you know what human bones look like? If you found a couple of rib bones and a couple of vertebrae, you'd probably just think it was a deer or something. And like I said, through scavenging and breaking everything down in acidic soil, I myself have spent a lot of time in the woods, and I've only ever come across animal bones a couple times, and it was fairly obvious to me that it was a hunter's kill. It wasn't an animal's kill, because you could see, where if you find a skull of like a deer or an elk or a moose, you can see where the antlers have saw marks or cut apart, or you can tell where it's been dismembered and cut apart by a hunter, and then scavengers find it off. You never find like a perfect complete skeleton in the woods. You maybe find a vertebrae or a bone here or there. And then if you come back a few months later, it's mostly gone. You might find one or two bones. You go back the next year, there's like nothing there. Maybe you're lucky you find one or two, if that, a year later. Also, Bigfoot so when you compound the factors of they may be burying their dead, they may be eating their dead, they may be going off to remote locations. Generally, there's not known how many numbers of these species are, where there's tens of thousands, if not, 30, what's the estimation, 30 or 40,000 black bears in North America, and, hundreds of thousands of deer, and we don't encounter those very often. I mean, there's lots of cougars, especially here where we are, and you almost never, ever find a dead cougar unless it's been shot or has some other thing. But just dying of natural causes, dying of old age or starvation or something, you never find these bodies. You never find these corpses. There's just, even in a relatively small chunk of woods, there's so much inaccessible areas. Plus, Bigfoot's been known to burrow into the side of riverbanks and stuff like that, and go up into trees and make forts and do all their little structures and find caves and whatever it is that they do. And you combine that, I think it's quite possible why we don't find them. And if you did find them and you're certain it was a Bigfoot, how would you know it's not a human? And would you want to touch it? And if you called the authorities and they would say, oh yeah, you found a dead body of a transient, don't go back. So there's just a lot of compounding factors. I mean, it would be a 1 in a billion chance of you going for a hike in the woods and you spot something off there and it was a freshly dead Bigfoot, or you found a skull. I know Choctaw nations and some of the other native tribes have stories of Indians using, or the Bigfoots using burial mounds, and Indians knowing where they are and not to mess with them, or as a way to provoke the Bigfoot, you could go steal bones, and doesn't end well. So yeah, I think it's very fascinating. I think with a lot of other stuff that goes on, if you called the government or if you reported that there was a dead body or some kind of dead animal, the government would probably come in, like I said, tell you that you saw a dead bear or you saw a dead person or something else, and confiscate the bones. Also, I think the government has a pretty good handle on where these things are, and if they don't see one for a while, or if they have trackers, because they track all kinds of other animals, they don't see this one, they know that it's passed away, maybe they go in and find a body and dispose of it, or they make sure that it died somewhere up on some rocky cliff or something that no human's going to go to. So I think these are all reasons why you don't find Sasquatch bones. And like I said, even if you did, would you know what you had? So I think it's a pretty interesting topic. Like I said, I don't condone you shooting a Bigfoot. I don't condone you going out and trying to hunt one of these things. If you did find any bones in the woods that look suspicious and you've read up on it and you're pretty sure that it's not a deer or an elk, or the rib bones look a little too curved and human and thick to be a deer or something else, take some pictures of it, take some scale. If you can get a little tiny sample of it, put it in a paper bag. But even then, what are you going to do with it? It would just come back as some kind of unknown creature, or possibly as a human, or possibly as an ape. Because you got to remember, when they compare DNA and hair samples and all that other stuff, they compare it to other known creatures. So even if you did have it analyzed, it would come back as unknown, or possibly human. So that's kind of the thing too, is it's kind of a loaded question. I guess if you had some research scientists that really made contact with these creatures, knew where one was buried, and could safely get in there and get the bones or a skeleton or a partial skeleton without being attacked and killed by the other Bigfoots, or had an idea, a super out there hypothetical type question is, I mean, you're talking about a rare creature in general, and then, or for sightings, that is, and then you're trying to find a dead one, because there are plane crashes all over the U.S. that went down in the 30s and 40s. A big, giant, massive plane went down. They still haven't found them all over the Sierras. There's, planes go missing and they don't find them for 20 or 30 years or ever. So you're talking about something that decomposes and breaks down like a Bigfoot body or skeleton. So these are just some factors to think about. I do think it's an interesting question. There is no smoking gun answer, but I do think there's a lot of things to think about why we don't find bodies and why we don't find bones. And I wanted to make a video about that today. I hope you enjoyed it. Please like and subscribe. It's really helping the channel out. And let me know what you think in the comment section, and stay safe in the woods, folks. Hey, everybody. Also inviting you to check me out at onstellar.com. It's a new social media website for paranormal stuff and aliens and ascension and conspiracies and cover-ups and all that kind of stuff. It's pretty cool. I'm still kind of new to it, but they've kind of invited me to be one of their new Bigfoot people to kind of talk about the subject more and form new groups, and plan on doing a lot of work on here. So if you can, check out On Stellar, folks. It's pretty awesome.